Hey milk bars and trips to Mars, welcome to another video. What you're about to watch is actually a section of a much larger conversation between myself and my good friend Justin Koo, aka That Christian Vlogger. We both read Francis Chan's latest book, Letters to the Church, and we had a long-form, almost 3-hour discussion on it, half of which is being released on this channel, the other half is being released week by week on his channel. So make sure you go and subscribe to Justin's channel. It's That Christian Vlogger. It is linked below. You're about to watch one section of that conversation. If you want to see the full conversation, that was actually released only to our Patreon supporters. So if you would like to support me, you'd like to support Justin and our ministries on Patreon, you can do that through the link in the description as well. But as for right now, we hope that you enjoy this clip of Letters to the Church, a discussion between myself and Justin Koo, aka That Christian Vlogger. Chapter 4, The Gang. Chapter 4 of Francis Chan's Letters to the Church is entitled The Gang. In this chapter, Chan, he is talking about how our connection with the church essentially just needs to be, or should be, or we're called to be much deeper. Mm-hmm. He uses the sort of somewhat humorous, maybe to some people offensive analogy of a gang. Like, imagine two people who are a part of a gang, maybe in inner city Los Angeles, walking up to one another and being like, "Hey, you going to gang today?"
Right.
No, I can't. I'm not going to be there this week. My son has soccer. Oh, okay. Well, we'll see you next week. Like, oh, you switched gangs. Oh, that's all right. I didn't really like the way that this gang was being run.
Right.
Like, that would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. And he also talks about it in terms of if you imagine like Paul and Peter talking about church that way.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what church do you go to?
Oh, the one by the river.
Yeah. Like, they have great music. Oh, can I come? I don't really like the music at my church. Like, that would be insane.
It's craziness.
For gang members or the first century apostles to be talking about. Mm-hmm. And yet that is a daily conversation that people have and that I have with people within the church.
Totally guilty.
So, talking about how our devotion to sort of pick up where he left off in chapter 3, how our devotion to the church and to the community there should look more like a gang or a family rather than this optional weekly meeting. And maybe a good place to start is where on the spectrum of optional weekly meeting to this is my gang, this is my family, where do you personally, Justin, find yourself falling?
Asking the hard-hitting questions, man. By the way, I loved this analogy because no one in a gang would ever refer to a building or a specific meeting that takes place during the week as the gang. The gang is the body. The gang are the people. And that's what God wanted for the church. The church was never supposed to be that building that's over on the corner, the one with the giant steeple and the bell that rings loud. Like, the church was supposed to be people. And I loved, I mean, I can understand why people will get offensive. Like, I loved how Francis Chan clarified. He's like, oh yeah, minus, the whole murder and drugs.
All
and
the drugs and guns and all that
stuff. Small things there. But like, I love that. I love that perspective. You asked, where do I fit from just optional weekly thing to this is my people, this is my community? I could answer that in two ways. I struggle with how to answer that because on one hand of the equation, this last weekend was the first time my wife and I got to go, quote unquote, to church together in the last several months, like at least 2 or 3 months. And so from like one perspective, it's that optional weekly meeting. But then from the other perspective, the reason why I haven't been going is simply because of my ministry has been calling me to places and like all these different things. And so in a different sense, like I'm all in. I mean, it's 7 days a week as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, though, I really feel like I'm landing more on the optional weekly thing. As if I were to interpret church as the physical community that I meet with on a weekly, hopefully more basis, I'm on that far end of the spectrum where it's just an optional thing. And I look at my own life and I'm just like, that's not what God wants for me. That's not his ideal. Totally.
And I think for me as well, there are obviously many weekends and many weeks where I have struggled to really get ingrained in a small group at our current church because like out of a 10-week small group, I guarantee you I'm missing at least 3 to 4 weeks just
Oh,
because I have to travel. Like,
yeah.
and if I'm missing almost half, that's
That's,
really hard
yeah.
to really get ingrained there. But I often, quote unquote, justify it to myself by being like, well, I'm going and doing ministry elsewhere, which is true.
Yeah.
But oftentimes I wonder, like, am I actually looking at it as I'm going to do ministry elsewhere, or am I really looking at it like I actually have to work?
Yeah.
And
sometimes it's both. Sometimes
honestly, it really is. But that's like a unique struggle. However, bouncing that question back to myself, I think that I am currently learning what it means to really be a part of a gang mentality with church, or a family. And what's interesting is that it's really happening at my current church for almost the first time for me,
Awesome.
At least within the full congregation. I've had small groups before, and groups of friends where it really felt that way, and we all went to the same church. But I'm talking about the whole congregation of our current church. And what's interesting to me about it is it did not come because I found a church with the best teaching I've ever heard, or the most incredible worship I've ever heard. That's not when I started to take ownership over, like, this is my church. I've started to take ownership over it because of the people that I've met and because of the connections that I'm making, which I think is sort of an interesting lesson for me, and hopefully for a lot of other people. We think we need to check off all the right boxes. You know what I mean? In order to perhaps find the right fit for us. But actually, the biggest box that's really going to cause us to be all in is the people.
So how did you meet these people? Did you show up at a quote unquote church and were introduced to them from like the greeting team? Like, how did you find this? Because I think that this is the kind of community so many people want. And honestly, this is the kind of community I'm craving. I would way rather not have a church building that I ever went to, like, any days of the week, but had a group of people, my gang, right, of people that I knew who had my back, and I could call any day, and we would, like, actually, like you were talking about in the previous video, doing life with, that's what I would way rather have than anything else. So I want to know, how did you find those people? Because that seems hard to find nowadays.
Yeah, so part of it is a bit specific to myself, and that is... and we'll talk about this probably in a later video as well.
All the shout outs to all the other episodes.
Yeah, come on. When the staff at my church found out that I had a YouTube channel and an online ministry that had some influence, they automatically became interested in who I was.
Oh, see, that's a win, but that's also not a win.
Yes. Now, where it really became a win was the staff was very much interested in who I was, and I got to know everyone on staff at my church before I got to know other people who went there, which was a great to meeting other people.
That helps a lot.
But the really nice thing was the first time I met with my pastors, we spent at least the first hour just talking about me as a person.
That's cool.
And nothing about my YouTube ministry or my speaking gift or anything like my teaching gift or anything like that, which was so refreshing. So part of it was that. Part of it was the fact that I sort of walked into a church with being a person of influence in the Christian community, and was brought in perhaps maybe with a little bit more intention than someone else. Yeah. Which that's maybe good for me in some ways, but I think on the whole, a negative thing about the church.
Yeah, totally.
But the other thing was, like, just like everyone else in the church, Aaron and I, we signed up for small groups, and we went to a really awkward first meeting and didn't connect with 6 of the other couples, but did find one couple that we sort of connected with. And then it was a challenge of how intentional are we going to be with these budding relationships to help them grow.
So are those 6 relationships that you found that you didn't hit it off with, now do you have a closer relationship with them? Are those your gang, or did those kind of like cycle through and now you found other people that you connected with? I mean, like, do I struggle through my small group to build that, or is it more I find that and it clicks when it clicks?
I don't know. I think because, like, for me, I said I'm learning what that means and what that is. And again, in my first meeting with our pastors, that was one of the first questions that he had for me, was like, who are like your people? Who's your community? Who's, essentially what he was saying is, who's your gang? And that's what he was way more concerned about than like, when are you going to teach for us?
Nice.
Which was really refreshing. So like I said, I'm learning it. For me, I think it's a mix of being intentional with it and allowing it to come organically.
Yeah.
Allowing those connections to sort of form where they do. And other times you're not going to be like super close friends with certain people, but it doesn't mean that they are not your brother or sister who is also a part of this gang and community, and you love them and you look out for them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the biggest things that has helped me in this journey, not to say that I've anywhere come close to where I need to be in this specific conversation.
Me too, by the way.
Was just doing coffee with some of the pastors in the area. So like, hey, let's just hang out, let's just chat and just talk. And kind of similar to what you were saying, like they didn't really ask me about my ministry or anything else like that, just talk to me as a person. And it was kind of interesting because this one guy in particular, we were doing this for a couple of weeks, kind of reoccurring, just talking about life and stuff like that. And he didn't even ask if I had a church or anything else like that. And at that point, I didn't have a church community that I was anywhere near connected with. And when that kind of came up in the conversation, he's like, oh my goodness, I just assumed you were plugged in somewhere else already. And it was so cool because to me, it was just like he had no ulterior motive to reaching out and connecting. It was just simply, let's hang out. And it was that approach. I don't think it was an approach. It was just that response that I was just like, oh, so if I do sign up with this church, they're not just looking at me as a resource that they could use. Like I could actually just show up and be part of the family. And so Emily and I have actually are in the process of becoming members at that church because that's the closest thing that we've found so far. We're still working on the rest of it, but I mean, that stood out to me.
I think it's a much longer process than most people give it credit for.
Yeah.
Aaron and I, we've been going to our church now for almost 2 years.
Wow.
And we're still not at a place where I can say like, this is my gang. We're definitely still in that process.
Where would you say you are on the spectrum if you had to put a number on it, 1 through 10? 2 years into it. 1 being like strangers, 10 being like, this is my gang, blood in, blood out.
6, 7 probably.
That is time, man.
Yeah, it definitely takes time, and it takes, feeling uncomfortable and things not working and times of maybe being a little hurt even by the church that we still go to, but that doesn't mean we're going to quit and jump ship. Yeah. Just because we have a little spat with one of our family members. Just like you wouldn't do that with a brother or sister.
Yeah, I like that. I respect that a lot. Because I think that for so many of us, we're quick to jump ships. I know from my own personality, I just like novelty. I like things to be changing all the time. And so it's difficult for me to not allow that part of myself to be like driven when it comes to finding the perfect church and just like jumping and jumping and jumping, but rather sitting in and doing the work of building legitimate relationships.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about the relationships that you've had if you think about your longest friendships, chances are for a lot of people, they started when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. And when you're a kid, like you don't really have to think much about being intentional about building a relationship with one another.
Right.
Because it's all surrounding your schedule. Right. It's all surrounding your parents setting up a play date or the fact that you were sat next to each other in class. So you literally saw each other every day. Mm-hmm. That just doesn't happen as an adult, especially the older you get. And so if you want to have that community and you want to be a part, to feel like you are walking into a family reunion when you go into your church, you are going to have to be the one who's putting in the effort now. It's not going to be your parents. It's not going to be your schedule. It's going to have to be you. And that's what it takes. It takes intention and humility and a willingness to maybe feel a little awkward sometimes, Yeah. That's part of it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Oh, let's see. Let me ask you this, because one of the verses that came up in this chapter talking about the gang and the unity that they described was in Acts chapter 4, kind of describing the early church. It talks about how they're of one heart, one soul, but then it talks about how it says no one had anything that belonged to themselves. but they had everything in common. And so when there was a needy person, like everyone basically like took care of that person. And like, it's hard for me to use another word than communism to describe that early church, but that's like my immediate take on it is like, dang, that's different. That's really, really different. Because in the US, where it's such like an individualized culture. I am my own person. I am like standalone. Like you take care of your family, I'll take care of mine, kind of a thing. Yeah. And so I really struggle with how to process this version of what unity and the gang and the church is supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's deeper than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know, that's definitely deeper than I'm comfortable with. However, once again, like to think about it in terms of like financially, this is really the first time in my entire life that I can say with confidence that I'm joyfully giving, you know, to the church and to God's church and to what God is doing in our church. And while that is not like I am willing to share anything and everything I have with whoever sat next to me this past weekend, I think that's a step perhaps in the right direction of I joyfully give my resources to the church, and I am trusting that they are stewarding those resources to meet the needs of not only our church, but our city and our world, you know, and I think that's a step in the right direction. I hope.
Yeah. He one last thing that I really loved is he talked about Holy Spirit love and unity is not confined to persecuted countries.
Oh. Wow, yeah. I think I forgot about that line. Can you read it again?
Yeah, Holy Spirit love and unity are not confined to persecuted countries. And I think he's bringing this up because he has a lot of experience working with churches in places like China or India, places where, you know, it quite literally could be illegal to be a Christian. And he's kind of making the point that these are the locations in which he sees Holy Spirit love and unity perhaps the most.
Yeah, but I think that's perhaps that is one of the things that leads to it.
Yeah, is that shared
persecution and a shared, like, we've gone through something together.
Yes.
You know, I think I think even just something as simple as going on a mission trip with people.
Oh, it's huge.
You know, I have relationships still to this day where it's like we meet each other's eye, and there's just this shared understanding of we've gone through something, you know, we've done something together. But that, again, that is what that sense of unity comes from. We actually need to be seeking that out with the people that are in our church. Then we need to be seeking out opportunities to go through stuff together. Yeah.
You were asking before we started recording, who those people were. Have I ever experienced this sense of the gang or my people? And 100% without exception, they are the people that I've gone through some type of really tough and challenging type of ministry with. I used to do a lot of like different kind of things prior to YouTube ministry and stuff like that. And without exception, my best friends are the people that I've done ministry with for months and years, like ongoing. And so I like applying that to my own life. Like if I really am trying to seek this gang sense or this family sense in my local church, I can't just show up looking to be filled. I can't just show up expecting to receive if I'm not willing to serve and to get in the trenches with them, because that's the way that is created.
That's what creates the unity. Think about soldiers who have gone to battle together.
Yeah.
And how forever now they have this sense of we are part of a unit. And it's not even just soldiers who are a part of the same unit. It's the fact we are part of the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
We are Marines. And then beyond that, we are ex-military. You know, it's like the Army, because they go through these things together, really have that sense of gang or family, which I think is something I'm learning just now, we actually need to seek out to create rather than wait for it to happen to us.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes total sense now reflecting on what you said earlier, that the way that you've experienced the closeness to your church, like the most closeness to your community as ever before, is when you and Sweet Bear started to go to this small group and put yourself out there and show up as consistently as you possibly could, because you're providing an avenue for that bond to be created.
That's right.
I think I know what I need to do moving forward. I gotta get deeper into my community, man.
Same. We'll do it together.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey friends, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this discussion, once again, head on over to Justin's channel, That Christian Vlogger. You'll find all of the odd chapter discussions on his channel. You'll find all the even chapter discussions right here. If you want to watch it all uninterrupted, you can just become a supporter of both of our Patreon pages. It is a great way for you to support the ministry that we are doing, help these ministries continue to grow, and you get to watch our whole almost 3-hour discussion of the book. You can watch that completely unedited, all put together. In the meantime, thank you all once again for watching. We'll see you next time on another video. I love you all. Keep being awesome.